The waves lap at the shore, the bubbles rise from the depths, and the sweet stranded lullaby plays in C major. The old song that comes from the sea is shrouded in darkness and mystery, and precious little is known about it, including what it actually sounds like, or was known, until now. Welcome viewers, I'm Vivat Veritas, and it's time to solve another mystery on the channel. There are many pervading questions surrounding the incomplete masterpiece that is Deltarune. Who is the knight? What role does Gasta have to play in the story? Are people ever going to stop talking about Woody theory in my comments? Today though, I want to talk about a particularly alluring mystery to me. As I've mentioned in the past, making theories isn't exactly my forte with my insatiable need to be correct and all. Sometimes, though, a mystery is just so salacious that I can't help myself. One of these mysteries, and the one we'll be looking at today, is the old song that comes from the sea. I seem to have some kind of affinity for songs associated with water, I suppose. For those not in the know, the old song from the sea actually has its roots in Undertale, being solely contained in an offhanded piece of dialogue from our friend the river person. However, like quite a bit of the dialogue from the river person, it's just ominous enough to warrant some further investigation, especially now that it's been mentioned by Onion in Deltarune as well. The known facts are as follows. Two characters are at least aware of this song, River Person and Onion, and it has been heard coming from deep in the water, ocean, lake, whatever this is, in Hometown. Yep, that's pretty much it. Everything else about this song is wrapped in speculation and vague understandings, not helped by the fact that we don't actually know what the old song from the sea sounds like. In fact, even those two facts aren't set in stone. The song that Onion hears in Hometown isn't explicitly called the old song from the sea, rather that they've heard the song from the sea before, but let's be real, if I can't accept that fact, then we've already lost. Connections can be made though, and I intend on doing just that as, well, it's kind of my job. By having a look at the facts and how they connect to the themes of both Undertale and Deltarune, maybe, just maybe, we'll have a better idea about this whole thing by the end of the video. Let's take a dive beneath the waves. Join me, won't you? Let's first float down the serene river of Undertale content to see what we can glean from the piece of media that started all of this. I'm sure that won't get annoyingly complex and vague anytime soon, and who else better to not be annoyingly complex and vague than the river person? The river person is what their name may imply. They're the ferrymen for the main quick travel of Undertale, invocative of Sharon and the like. The river person is one of my favourite Undertale characters just because I really do love those little innocuous characters who know far more than they really should. The fact that we don't know who or what they even are really adds to it. They're just the river person. Regardless, we're not here to speculate on their identity, it's just their dialogue that interests us. Most of their dialogue is either somewhat aimless, that has every possibility of becoming earth-shatteringly important in any future Deltarune updates, or things that could be potentially construed as hints about things in the game itself, such as the piano puzzle or Asgore's favourite food. There are a couple, though, that are very, very interesting.
Tra-la-la, the angel is coming. Tra-la-la, beware the man who speaks in hands. Tra-la-la, beware of the man who came from the other world. Tra-la-la, did you ever hear the old song coming from the sea?
All of these are pretty suspicious for one reason or another. The first one is the easiest to explain. The angel is part of the legend of the Deltarune, something that is only really mentioned by Gerson in Undertale, so it isn't necessarily suspicious. However, it's a little hard to take it at face value when River Person has other Deltarune adjacent dialogue, so I think it's worth mentioning considering how important the angel seems to be in the Deltarune worlds, both light and dark. The man who speaks in hands is probably Gasta, let's be real, so River Person definitely has a level of awareness of him. They could also just remember Gaster from the good old days, but still a fun little bit that ties them to Gaster and thus Deltarune. The man who came from the other world is, at this point, probably Sans, but much like my It's Raining Somewhere Else video, I'm not a die-hard on the theory that Sans is from Deltarune. It just seems to kind of make sense. Regardless, the sheer mention of the other world feels like an incredibly strong hint towards Deltarune, considering its nature. That just leaves the old song from the sea as the final Deltarune link. Originally, the old song was thought to be associated with room_tundra_dock, the place where the wrong number song can play based on fun values. The fact that the phone call asks for someone whose name starts with G and is inherently tied to fun values is suspicious in and of itself, but enough where it was more gastery than having any actual thematic or narrative connection. That was, of course, until Chapter 2 of Deltarune, with the reveal of a song coming from deep in the sea. Now it seems like there's a much more present and a much more foreboding association with this line. River Person's awareness of this may mean that, like what most of their knowledge pertains to, the song from the sea is something that is part of Undertale's world as well as Deltarune, like Gaster, the Angel, and maybe Sans. I guess something that is old and mysterious like this could very well be some kind of universal constant, but unfortunately that's about all we can really grasp from this. Definitely something useful though, as it means we can speculate a bit better based on what we're able to see in Undertale. There is one small thing I'd like to point out as well. River Person is one of the few unique NPCs from Undertale that does not appear in Deltarune in any form. Even some pretty minor guys come in, and when you take a look at the NPCs that aren't in Deltarune, you notice something. River Person is the only one here who actually does something in Undertale. The other ones missing are often people just scattered around the overworld who fill in space. River Person is missing though, with nothing that really hints to where they could be. I'm not sure what this means at this stage, but it could mean that we'll see River Person in the future play a slightly more important role. Maybe they're the nut. However, there is another link to the old song from the sea in Undertale that goes unnoticed at times. It's a bit tenuous, but there's another individual associated with Waterfall that's also very associated with music, that being Chiron. Chiron is a bit of a weird case, as not only does she appear even if the kill counter is depleted, but she also gets some specific mentions from characters like Undyne. It kind of seems like she's important, especially with Sans pointing her out on Tumblr, but it's not abundantly clear why. I think it's important to bring her up now though, as she is one of the characters who actively sings in the game and is very tied to music. Her battle, on the surface, is quite simple, only needing to hum once to pacify, but if you continue further you get an entire concert going in Waterfall, with even Sans coming to sell tickets? Chiron also has, or had, a sister named Shira, if Deltarune graves are anything to go by, who was a very competent singer and was teaching Chiron. When you encounter what Shira has become in the true lab, you can help pacify Lemon Red by singing a familiar tune. The phrasing of a familiar tune will be a bit more important later, so keep it in mind. At the end of the day though, Chiron's presence here and the aforementioned details don't immediately stand out as something particularly important in Undertale, until, that is, we look further. You see, Chiron also appears in Deltarune like a lot of unique characters. Her appearance is only minor, but it's definitely worth mentioning. She appears in the hospital in Chapter 2, resting her voice. Now this might seem pretty innocuous, but the most important thing to note is that this occurs after Onion tells us about hearing the old song. Since she's resting her voice, it does seem possible that she was the one singing that familiar tune in the waters of Hometown. Considering these slightly suspicious things that we already know about her, it's entirely possible that she too knows the old song. However, I don't think that would be the end of the mystery, even if she was the culprit, so to speak. Why would she be singing it? Why is it portrayed so ominously? And what purpose does it serve in the further narrative? Again, it might technically be answering a question, but it's really just another fact in our arsenal towards understanding the song. Classic Deltarune, giving us one answer and then 100 new questions. Of course, the other character we should look at in Deltarune is Onion. Although they don't really mention anything particularly suspicious in Undertale, their role in Deltarune seems to be a little more specific, maybe because Toby forgot why they existed in the first place. They are, after all, who we hear about the song from in this world. At the end of Chapter 2, when we go visit them by the lake, they mention that they hear a song coming from deep in the water, which they've heard in the sea before, and that they're going to investigate what this is. We're on a time limit, baby! Thanks to Onion, we now have a new piece of information about the old song, that being that it's been in the sea and is now here. Something that I think is interesting is how in Undertale, Onion's counterpart wanted to go back to the ocean, and now it seems like Onion used to be there. Or maybe this body of water is connected to the sea? It's unclear. However, this old song, although being tied to the ocean/sea, isn't actually limited to there. That means that it's liable to move around, and it's reasonable to hear it in a lot of places, though those places do seem to just be other bodies of water, which keeps it nice and easy. Onion describes this tune as familiar, a tune that they've heard before, which is pretty evocative of the familiar tune that is mentioned in Lemon Bread's combat. We also know that whatever the song is, it's certainly audible in the light world, which likely prevents it from being something that's Dark World exclusive. The fact that the song is coming deep from Hometown is also particularly interesting. Wherever this song is originating from here isn't exactly for public consumption in the way that a concert or something might be. It's something that's being actively hidden. The thing is, although this song can be heard in the light world, there's something else that seems to be deep below Hometown, the Dark Worlds. With this knowledge, a small fact about the Dark Worlds becomes very interesting. When we first arrive in the Dark World with Chris, while the screen is black before they wake up, the sound that plays in the background here is titled Ocean.ogg. Now, this doesn't exactly sound very much like music, and I doubt that this is the old song from the sea, but it seems that the Dark World, at least the Castletown Dark World, is associated with the ocean. I suppose this makes sense considering the dark fountains. They have to be coming from some kind of source, so perhaps there is some kind of ocean of darkness. We do naturally fall when we first enter the Dark World, and every other time we do seem to be falling a considerable distance, so the Dark Worlds definitely have a sense of being under or deep below the Light World. Jevil also mentions something along the lines of Hell's raw bubbles from the depths, which even further reinforces this link between Dark Worlds and deepness. The fact that the Deltarune Dark Worlds seem to be repeatedly tied to the ocean, or at least deepness, is really interesting, and I think it's worth talking about. Of course, darkness and deepness have a pretty obvious connection. It is very dark deep in the ocean. So of course that brings to light, or dark, a relatively important point. If the old song from the sea is associated with deepness or the depths, and the deepness/depths is associated with darkness, thanks to the Dark Worlds, what naturally follows is that the old song by the sea is therefore associated with darkness. We can add that to the pile of stuff associated with darkness, I suppose, but what's more relevant is that it opens up a lot of potential connections with the old song from the sea. Darkness is already thematically connected to the ideas of mystery and escapism, so what does that mean for the song? We'll get to that in a bit, but what's important to know is that we have, in some way, proven a connection between the old song and darkness, as much as you can prove anything about a game through wild speculation and a sprinkling of thematic analysis. Okay, now it's time for the real analysis to begin. We've collated all of our data, and from our knowledge of Deltarune and Undertale we can begin to make some guesses and statements based on the thematic texture of these games. Naturally, understanding what the song is important, and our delving into River Person, Shyren and Onion, as well as the miscellaneous Deltarune references, has been towards that purpose. However, answering the actual question at hand has never been my main interest in any given project, and this video is no exception. Instead, now that we have established some new facts, or at the very least some new ideas, we can try to understand why this song exists, and what role it might have in the thematic tapestry of the game itself. In Undertale, the old song by the sea seems to be rooted in the same cryptic mystery that concepts like Gaster and the Angel are associated with. This mystery, which seems to be connected to many of the Deltarune Undertale links, is also associated with darkness, through both Gaster as well as the pre-existing link in Deltarune between darkness and mystery. The fact that pretty much everything in Undertale left that is still a mystery seems to be tied to or heavily implied to be connected to Deltarune really cements the old song as inherently connected to the themes of Deltarune, but unfortunately when it comes to the thematic involvement with Undertale itself, there isn't really much to be said. Undertale's themes of control, mercy and all that jazz is very comprehensive, but it doesn't seem to really be connected to the old song from what we've seen. However, I think something that is in Undertale is a sense of nostalgia or otherwise suspended time. It kind of feels like time moves differently in the underground, with a very unique collection of items, phrases and cultural aspects. Considering that the old song is described as, well, old, as well as its connections to the music box in Waterfall through Shiren, I think the old song by the sea is definitely, perhaps unintentionally, invoking those feelings of better times, some other time when things were simpler, but much like the other markers of nostalgia in Undertale, that feeling of the past should not be dwelled upon lest it consume you. Let's be real, there's probably a reason that this old song is only spoken about in whispers. Deltarune, however, is brimming with textual possibilities that the song can connect with, especially since the song itself seems to be more connected to the major physical metaphor of darkness, which can be applied to almost every theme in the game. There is one particular theme that stands out to me that's associated with darkness, one that's been talked about ad nauseum by both myself and the wider Deltarune community. So, what is the actual textual purpose of the song? Why is it being brought up now in Chapter 2 of a different game? Well, having a look at all of our evidence so far, I believe it has something to do with the theme of escapism, notably the nostalgia of escapism. Hey, it's that word again. There's a reason I've been talking about Undertale. You see, there is something notably nostalgic about Deltarune. Whether it's the overworld deliberately trying to invoke Undertale, and the fact that I'm nostalgic for that makes me feel old, the overall simplistic nature of Hometown with its early internet-era technology, the emphasis on video game rumors and creepypastas like in the playground, if not nostalgia, there's at the very least a sense of innocence that underlies a lot of the game. The Dark Worlds are like this too, with their escapism being infused with childlike whimsy even amongst the slightly intimidating cast of characters like King, but even they are pretty simplistic in their nature. In fact, it's the secret bosses, the characters that feel out of place in some way, that are the most unnerving. But even they have a sense of nostalgia, or at least evocative of the past, especially Spamton with his history with Noelle. The nostalgia isn't necessarily seen as a great thing though, much like the escapism it's linked to. There's a clear mysterious event in the past, in Chris and Noelle's childhood, that is skirted around and seems to have had a large impact on the lives of the Dreamer and Holiday households. Dessa's disappearance is mysterious though. Of course, Chris and or Noelle might know more about it than they're letting on, and the level of disruption that would bring to the lives of young children would understandably encourage them to be lost in the darkness of escapism, constantly searching for a time like the one before everything went wrong. That desire for escapism, for nostalgia, manifests through literal darkness, the Dark Worlds, and metaphorical darkness, the Roaring and feasibly the Weirdroot. What's interesting is that Dessa's disappearance, possibly the inciting incident for Chris's situation, obviously has Des at its center. As you might have noticed from other people's Deltarune videos, Des doesn't have a canon appearance. In fact, the only thing that really represents her is this guitar, mainly because it appears with presumably Des's song. Huh, so Des's only current visual is associated with music. We've already connected the old song to darkness in Deltarune and therefore mystery, and Des's disappearance is perhaps the most mysterious thing in Deltarune at this stage. Not to mention that Des might even be stuck in a dark world, or at the very least somewhere that is dark if she is indeed the person trapped in the code. Des, darkness, nostalgia and music, all of these four things are connected in Deltarune. And if there is going to be anything at the center of all of this, any particular purpose for the old song by the sea, I think it is to explore this specific situation. The situation of painful and ominous nostalgia and how this can manifest in dangerous, perhaps even worrying ways. To put it incredibly simply, the old represents nostalgia, sea represents darkness, and song represents Des, I guess. The fact that this song first showed up in our collective past makes it clear that whatever role this song is going to play in the greater textual narrative, it is going to not only highlight the wistful nostalgia underlying Deltarune, but is probably going to be a gut punch whenever we do find out what it is. Speaking of which, I know I stated earlier that I wasn't interested in the identity of the old song by the sea, especially since it's almost certainly just a song we haven't heard before, and honestly I don't think it's that important, but, well, you've made it this far, right? I will also say here that although I think the old song by the sea is really interesting, I don't think it's going to be that important to the actual story of Deltarune. Yes, I think it'll appear at least partially, and its reveal will be centered around the themes of nostalgia and escapism, but I think it'll mostly eventuate as a key piece of evidence towards those being the theme of the game rather than, like, Gaster's theme. I just think it's cool, hence the video. As I was doing my research for this video, something began to really stand out to me. Almost every single relevant piece of information from Undertale comes from individuals located in Waterfall. Sans' post and, technically, the Grillby's dinner with him, the mention of Gaster, Chiron and Sans at her concert, Onion and River Person for the first time are all around here. Even more interestingly, Waterfall is where the piano puzzle is located. For a place with my favourite location theme of the game, it's quite convenient that it's tied to music this heavily. And man, Sans really gets around here, huh? Whether it's his sentry post, at Chiron's concert, the telescope, even taking you out for dinner. You know, this kind of reminds me of something familiar, of a song I really like, a familiar tune, tied to Waterfall in a few ways. Aha! I tricked you! I tricked you all into listening to me talk about its rating somewhere else again. And this isn't like my Gaster tangent. This is a genuine, real thing that I believe. There's so much relevant to this that I can't help but mention that, hey, maybe its rating somewhere else is the old song coming from the sea. I can't possibly think of any other possibilities it could be. Anyway, as I was saying, its raining somewhere else fills a lot of the criteria that a song would hypothetically have to fill to qualify for being the true identity of the old song from the sea, apart from obviously having been used in Undertale, so there's no way it's going to be used for such an important point in Deltarune. Aside from that obvious sticking point that immediately disqualifies it from contention, there's plenty of evidence. First of all, obviously it's associated with water. The raining in the title is doing a lot of heavy work here, but it's also got its aforementioned links to Waterfall, being the only place in Undertale where it rains. Additionally, Waterfall is the only place in the game where we really see water in general. Ruins, Snowden, there is a river that ice gets thrown into, and where does Sans and Papyrus live? Easy game. Hotland, too busy being hot. Cord, New Home, Barrier, True Lab, wouldn't count on it. It's raining somewhere else's connections with water, especially the sea, thanks to both Onion, Sans, and Onion's dialogue. No, I don't know why they have different names, speak for themselves. We've got the sea bit down, but what about the old? Well, considering the themes we've talked about, we're looking for a sense of nostalgia and wistfulness. As I've mentioned before, It's Raining Somewhere Else is laced with a sense of ominous wistfulness, both in the song's construction and the setting that it's played in. It's deliberately nostalgic, wistful and melancholic, with the slow jazz and familiar incorporation of Sans' theme, and the setting of the MTT resort makes you consider your long journey to this place and looking towards your final hurdle. In the It's Raining Somewhere Else video, a lot of people in the comments stated that the somewhere else that the song is describing could be an alternate save file / timeline like the one Sans mentions in his fight. I do kind of understand that, but I also think that it's not aligned with the point of the music, the point being Sans' nostalgia and desire for a better time. It would make sense then that Sans' nostalgia blends into ours with the use of this song. Not to mention, with the evocation of Undertale's graphical style with the light world, it wouldn't be totally out of the question to use the game's soundtrack to evoke nostalgia in the same way. As you can see, when all of the evidence is in one place, it really does seem like It's Raining Somewhere Else could be the old song from the sea. It is incredibly likely, of course, but hey, you've got to call your shot when you feel it in your bones. For a moment though, I'd like to take a step aside from all of this. The main reason I think it could be It's Raining Somewhere Else is, of course, because I want it to be relevant. I am naturally very nostalgic for this song, and I think we all have a song from Undertale or even Deltarune that we're nostalgic for, that we find special. I found that music specifically really evokes those feelings of nostalgia and wistfulness more than most other things. Whether it's a song that played around your house as a child, a song that you heard a lot on TV growing up, or maybe it was a tune you had to learn for your early music lessons, music has a way of embedding the emotions of the past into the future. It's part of the reason that Toby uses leitmotifs so heavily in his soundtracks. It makes you think about all the other times you've encountered it, and it invokes a particular emotional reaction from you. In a way, the old song by the sea is an in-narrative way of doing just that. We, as the players, find the music from his games nostalgic, and it drives our love, our curiosity, our fear. In Undertale and Deltarune, the old song coming from the sea does the same. It makes the characters feel those same feelings. Adventure, mystery, fear. These are all important to Deltarune, and I suppose it makes sense that, regardless of the actual identity of the song itself, that this is why the characters hear that old song coming from the sea. Even if they can't remember it, even if they feel like they've heard it before, some memories can't be forgotten. And what better way to bring them back than music? Thanks for joining me on another Deltarune video, I always appreciate it. I promise I'm not getting desperate with my video ideas, and I intend on making plenty more, especially about Deltarune. I'm sure I'll do something a bit out there occasionally, but I can assure you that I'll still be on the Deltarune train for quite some time. I also wanted to be a bit more chill, I suppose, with this one, hence my delivery, so let me know if you like it. I am going to be taking a bit of a break as I'm going on holiday for a bit, and then I'll naturally be a bit busy over December, but I won't rule out a new video coming out in that time frame. You never know. I don't have anything in the works exactly, so feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments. I'd also love to hear your opinions about the old song from the sea, as I don't see many people talk about it. Who knows, maybe I'll do a comment reaction stream like all the greats. A big ol' thank you to my patrons Maggie, Michael Bates and Kayla Barker. As always, it wouldn't be possible with people like you supporting me. If you'd also like to have a hand in the making of these videos, feel free to join my Patreon using the link in the description below. I would certainly appreciate it. Until next time, I've been Viva Veritas, and I'll see you again soon.